Hello and welcome to this session on bottom line transforms, precision forms for Microsoft Dynamics. My name's Paul Saxton and I'm a solutions consultant with eBECS. So just a really quick recap for those of you that are existing customers and also visit this for those of you that aren't yet eBECS customers, a quick overview of who we are. So we're a global Dynamics AX reseller. We're 100% Microsoft focused. We have over 250 staff with over 350 successful implementations. We're head officed out of the UK in Chesterfield. We've got additional offices in Swindon and London. We have a presence in the Middle East and also North America. So eBECS, we're focused on Dynamics AX, Dynamics CRM, business intelligence, as well as our cloud and office-based offerings. So let's take a quick look at what Precision Forms for Microsoft Dynamics can do for us. So Precision Forms is very tightly integrated into Microsoft Dynamics AX. So that's really important in terms of the usability of the application. If we take a look on the left hand side, we can see an example of a standard out of the box invoice. On the right hand side, we can see one that's been developed using the Precision Forms tools. We rarely get a lot of additional functionality with Precision Forms that we wouldn't necessarily get inside Dynamics AX. One of the really nice features is our ability to apply workflow. We can utilize that workflow technology to define the layout of the report. So if we have an invoice layout that we need to use for a specific country requirement, we can do that. We can also change the invoice depending on the company that we're working with. So we have real flexibility over which layouts are used in which situations, and we've got a really simplified user interface that allows any system or power user to create new documents. We don't simply have to use Precision Form to create the documents. We can also track the approval of documents using the Precision Forms application. Very often we may need to send a document out for review to have signatures added, and then for that PDF document to be approved for distribution. Precision Forms allows that process to happen really quickly and easily. In addition, it gives us enhanced tracking functionality. So if we think about an accounts receivable department, when we're thinking about credit terms, when does the clock start ticking for our credit terms to be applied? Very often our customers will start to apply the date that they receive the invoice rather than the date that the invoice is created. Through the use of Precision Forms, we can ensure that that document is delivered promptly and that we have verification that that document has been delivered, enabling us to start that clock much sooner in the process. So let's take a look at Precision Forms for Dynamics in action. So here we are inside Microsoft Dynamics AX 2012, and we can see that integration in place here. All we've got is a new section in our menu item called Bottom Line. So let's take a look at some of these configuration screens. If we take a look at the default section, we can see a series of parameters that are configured at the global level. These are really easy to define, but identify the location that our XML outputs are populated, as well as whether the application is enabled for use. As well as those defaults, we can define which delivery destinations are available. So in this case, we've got almost all of the delivery destinations enabled, including printing, email, processing, third-party screens, SharePoint, and so on. What's unique about one of these entries is, from an email point of view, we can see that user restrictions have been enabled. When user restrictions are enabled, if we take a look at the user tab, we can see that only the administrator is able to generate an email-based delivery mechanism. And that's really a great way of controlling how those documents are able to be distributed. For example, we wouldn't really want picking slips being distributed directly out to our customers, hence we'd be able to restrict that by user. Again, this configuration is done at the global level as with the defaults, which means that we don't have to go into each individual company to do that. The next most important screen that we have is the enabled report screen. So here we can see a list of different reports, and we can see that bottom line has been enabled for all but one of those. I'm going to deselect the sales invoice, but let's take a look at some of the additional setup options we've got here. I'm going to remove our parameters for a second and we'll get back to that. But you can see we've got some really simple configuration available to us. In the delivery schedule, this is really great functionality for those of us that want to set a schedule up for when a new design of a report comes online. This may be a governance requirement, it may be a legal requirement that comes into play, let's say on the 1st of January of a new fiscal year, and we're able to set that design to automatically become the design that the system will use. Again, we can set destinations that are available for that specific report. So let's go ahead and go over to the accounts receivable section, take a look at an invoice journal, and we're going to preview the original document. So this is the invoice that you would get from Microsoft Dynamics AX right out of the box, and we can see what this layout looks like. I'm just going to jump back to our enabled reports section, and I'm going to enable bottom line transform for sales invoice. I'm going to hop back to my invoice journal form. I'm going to do the exact same thing and click on the original preview, but this time I get a document that's being created by Transform. As we can see, the layout is fantastic. We're able to very simply and easily create a look and feel that's really familiar to us, and we can also include things like barcodes into any area of our reports. What's really important, and hopefully you'll agree, is that we didn't really see any difference in the processes that we went through inside Dynamics AX. We simply received a report that had a different layout. If we hadn't been the administrator, there is nothing different to the process that we went through. What's also important is all of the business logic that's contained within Microsoft Dynamics AX is retained in the bottom line generated report. Okay, so here we are back in the administration area inside Dynamics AX. I just want to jump back into enabled reports and cover a couple of additional things. So if we take a look at the sales invoice, this is a really complicated document to modify normally. The document is based on something called a report data provider class, and that populates a series of temporary tables based on some Dynamics AX X++ code. Effectively, this is something that we find requires the skills of an experienced AX developer. And that developer too may have a few issues with the sales invoice, given the fact that the only way to generate an invoice is to pass a large number of parameters. to work with. So effectively the developers working a little blind, having to modify a layout and then render the report to see how that layout turns out. With the bottom line product, what happens is we generate some XML that's used as the source of the document, and this means that we're able to work with that document with real data right during that design process. So what we're going to do here is jump over to the setup section, and we're going to give a new report parameter to this. So we're just going to set this to test. What setting this parameter does is it sets the system to look for a new layout called test, so we can create as many different layouts as we want to and very quickly switch between those by just entering the parameter. One last thing that I'd like to cover before we generate some XML to use for our design is around related tables. So let's take a look at those. So as I said, the standard sales invoice is based on a report data provider class query which populates a temporary table. So any amendments, any new columns that are required from that report have to go through an AX developer, and a reasonably large amount of code is required to make this happen. Utilizing this technology, we can take that report data provider class generated report and we can join the temporary tables out to any number of external AX tables. All these relationships are managed inside Dynamics AX, so all of that consistency and validation remains in place. If we take a look at an existing one, what we can see is we then find it very easy to go through and find additional field groups and turn additional items on. So if we take a look at the customer table, we could turn on the customer group, we could turn on invoice account details, we can turn on order account. I'm going to turn those off for now as we don't need them for the report. On top of those specific fields, we can also utilize display methods that may be available to that table. So it's a really quick and easy way of creating relationships to other tables without the need for development input. Back in the accounts receivable section, we're going to take a look at the invoice journal. Remember, we've added that additional parameter for a report layout that does not exist. So when I create a new print preview and take a look at the original document, what happens is the XML required to populate that new design has been created, but as the test design doesn't exist, bottom line gives us a message to say that that is yet to be defined. What's great though is that that data has been created. So let's take a look at Transform itself. And we'll jump into the Transform Designer. We're going to select a new project, and we're going to select a Microsoft Dynamics AX project. Obviously, the product itself isn't exclusively focused on Microsoft Dynamics, but that's the template that we need here. Something we're not going to cover in this session, but something that we find very useful is our ability to convert an XPS, i.e. a Word document, into a new form, and that might be something that some of you already have available. It's a very straightforward process of taking that Word document and converting it into your invoice, your picking list, your packing slip, those kind of things. So the next thing that happens is we're brought to a new screen where we're able to pick that XML document. Remember, this XML document is the data required to generate that invoice that we rendered last time when we got the warning message telling us that a design didn't exist. So we're going to click on open here. We're going to choose a path for this repository. I think that's fine. Paper orientation, I would guess probably 95% of our documents are going to be generated in portrait. And then Transform has gone ahead and started to allocate what it thinks is the most appropriate layout for the data sources that it has. The only one that it's not identified here is our sales invoice temp table, which we know contains our lines, so we're going to create that as repeating. I'm going to jump into this document and I'm going to clear those selections. I'm just going to take the actual item ID and we'll take the invoice amount. Okay. Once we've got those two things, I'm going to take a look at the header. In fact, let's just go back here. I want the item ID. I'm going to take the name actually. Let's not bring the values through just yet. From the header, we're going to go ahead and clear all of these. All we want at this point is the company name and the company address. We're going to click OK. So that's everything that Transform needs to create that initial document. We're just going to OK through the rest of the messages here. What we'll see is it's going to analyze the fields that are available, and it's going to very quickly create that report. There's been no coding required. We could have added additional tables, as we said, additional columns without any code, and we're left with its initial layout. Now in this case, we're not really interested in these labels, so I'm just going to highlight these. I'm holding Control down. I'm going to get rid of this line as well. I'm going to delete those. Really quick and easy. Here we can see we're in the header section. Here's the body with repeating, and right down at the bottom we can see that there's a footer too. Let's go to the top. I'm going to take the company, I'm going to align it into the top left hand corner. We can see that as we do that we're getting red lines that help us to align our field. Let's do that, just get that lined up, that's nice. And we're going to put the address right underneath. So it's really quick and easy to do. We also want our logo in here, so I'm going to click on this picture of Mona Lisa. I'm going to choose where I want my picture to end up. I'm going to go into my bottom line folder and pick up my Contoso logo. I'm able to either embed it into the actual report, or I could link to an external picture, which obviously I could change at some point in the future without having to revisit the report. In this case, I'm happy to embed that. I'm going to make my header a little larger, again really easy. I'm going to drag that down. I'm going to add another few items here. So on the left hand side, when I pick a specific data item, you can see that the highlighter is moving to the field that I've selected. So things that I want to do, I want to add the invoicing name, so I'm just really easily dragging that across, dropping it into place. And I'm going to put invoicing address. So this is a really great way of lining things up for when we've got those Windows envelopes. And because it's something that we might want to line up for a Windows envelope, we don't want it to move in the future. So let's take a look at how we can take control of that. Well, one great feature here is tagging. If we select two items at the same time, we can give them a new tag. We'll call it window. And then if we look over here on the filters, we can select window. So once we've selected window, all the items that are associated with the Windows tag are selected. I could go ahead and I could change the format, the font, the text size, those kind of things very easily. But I can also lock it. So right now I can't make a mistake. I can move things like our logo around, but I'm unable to select those two items. So once I've set those, they're nice and organized. I don't need to move them anymore. They're going to print in the right location for my Windows envelope. They're now secured. So I'm going to add another few items into here. Let's take a look at what they are. I'm going to pick up on the let's have a look. I'm going to take the Let's take the invoice account. We're going to take the invoice date. And again, you can see that as we're picking these, not only can we see the name of the field, but we can also see an example of the data that sits with that document. I'm going to take the sales ID. And I'm going to take payment condition. So that was really easy. I'm going to leave this one a bit out of alignment and just show you we can highlight these by dragging, and then I can set a left align to make that really simple. Okay, so I need some labels for this so I know what these relate to. Again, I can go from my sales header invoice temp to the header labels, and again I can go down here and I can start to pick out those sales invoice, label details. Sorry. Let's take invoice account. And I can line them up. Quite straightforward. We need invoice date. We need sales ID. And we need our payment condition. Okay, so they're all nicely lined up and have been entered here. What's really important is to use labels, because obviously they're going to pick our language settings up. I'm just going to try and make sure that this is correctly aligned here. There we go, that looks good. So I might want to add some additional features here. I'm going to take the box and draw that round here. That's great. I'm going to change some of the properties and make sure that the edges are nicely rounded. I'm going to, whoops, that's a bit too much. There we go, that's better. I'm going to draw a line between the two let's go from here to here. There we go, that looks great. That's exactly what I wanted. So hopefully you'll agree that was pretty easy to do, but we need to add some additional information into the lines section now. So let's click on an individual line. Notice that the repeating row section is now highlighted and the header has been greyed out. I'm going to add some really simple things here. Let's take the quantity and drag that in. Let's take the sales price and drag that in. And let's take our line amount and bring that through too. There we go. Now it's worth mentioning while we're at this point that it's absolutely possible to create calculated fields inside of the product, so we don't have to be in a situation where the fields are coming from AX. That's not something we'd really recommend. What we'd usually say is that you should be taking those values from your source system, although if we find a reason that that requires that to happen in the short term, then we do have that option made available. Here I'm just changing the size of each of the lines. I'm going to highlight each of these numbers. They're ever so slightly too large. Let's take those down to 8. That looks a little better and matches the other rows. So that's really, really easy to do. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that layout. I'm going to save this design and deploy it to the transform server. It's just going to take a few seconds to do. And there we go. So let's close our report. So remember, let's just go back and recap what we've done here. To check this, we'll take a look at enabled reports. We can see that the sales invoice is looking for our parameter called test, which we've now created. So we should be able to go back to accounts receivable, to our invoice journal, and we can hit original preview. And there we go, there's our document generated in the new layout. Of course, that layout isn't just appropriate for that specific invoice. We can go back and print any of those invoices, and they will now have that new layout applied. So just to close our session down, some of the key benefits that we'll see from the Transform product is a flexible format for our layout options. Hopefully you could see how easy that was to do. We're able to define different headers based on different pages, different footers based on different pages, and hopefully you can see that was a really simple and easy to use design environment. It gives us those great and enhanced features, particularly around formatting options, workflow, and different designs based on different attributes within the report. And it's really easy to install and maintain, and appears completely seamless to our end users. Some of the customers that we've been working with over the past 3 months using the Transform product. Other key benefits that we see, obviously it's helping us better lay out our reports and saving paper that way. It's also enabling us to deliver our reports and documents in electronic ways. We see a huge improvement in terms of development speed. We're talking in the realms of 10 to 20% of the original development requirement when utilizing Transform. And this is something that we actively encourage our customers to own, so you haven't got to come back to us when you need new documents. And with that, I'd like to wrap up the session and say thank you for your time. Thank you.